In the hectic world of hospital security, a guard encounters an impatient patient named Gerald, whose outrageous plan to beat the waiting room queue spirals into a comedic tale of unexpected consequences. Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today, we're jumping into some malicious compliance. This story comes to us from Sephiroth. You don't want to wait in the emergency department if you insist. Don't know for sure if this fits here, but I thought you guys would appreciate what happened tonight. For starters, I work as a security guard for one of the few hospitals in our city. Besides dealing with combative patients and visitors and doing patrols around the campus, we occasionally get asked to assist with getting people out of their vehicles and escort them by wheelchair to the emergency department or their appointment at an on-site clinic. Today, a couple of nurses came to our office asking for our help. They had received a call from a gentleman, who we will call Gerald, asking for help to get out of their car, as he was in severe pain. I went out with the nurses, pushing a wheelchair and radioing my partner to come assist, as it sounded like it was going to take some extra hands to help him out. It took a little bit for us to find him, but we found him thanks to him blowing his car horn for all to hear. Now, I have interacted with dramatic people before, and this guy was no different. He told us about how he was in so much pain, how he drove himself all the way over here and couldn't move the car anymore, and how he needed to be treated. We tried to offer help, but he refused to grab our arms or hands to steady himself, relying on the car door and the wheelchair to get himself in it. Once he got himself settled, he asked me to move the vehicle to a better parking spot. After all, he had handicap stickers, and he needed the space to get in when he finished his visit. So I obliged, feeling a little bit odd about the whole situation, and moved his car to a handicap spot near the emergency department entrance. Gerald got checked in at the emergency department, and we were done with the situation. At least, that's what I thought. Boy, were we wrong. Not even 20 minutes later, I get told that this guy wanted to leave and wanted us to take him back to his car. Apparently, he started complaining and moaning about how the wait time was too long. Keep in mind that there were people in the waiting room who had been there for hours. The emergency department was very full today, and this guy couldn't stand being there for even a few minutes. I first checked with emergency department staff because I was worried about the fact that he himself said he couldn't drive. They told me that since they hadn't triaged him and he wanted to leave so soon, they legally couldn't hold him here even if they wanted to, which they didn't care that much since they were already busy with treating their patients. So I went back out to the emergency department and asked him point blank if he was really sure he wanted to leave, because I didn't want to be held responsible in case he drove and got into an accident. But he said yes, he wanted to leave right then and right now. So I reluctantly pushed out of the emergency department toward his car. This is where my malicious compliance begins. Gerald starts saying, verbatim, "When we get to my car, I'm gonna call the ambulance." Wait, what? Yeah, gonna call an ambulance. I can't drive and I don't like everyone here except you. They're too slow here, and I'm not spending all night here. Besides, calling an ambulance will get me to a room quicker, and I can get help with my pain. So you want to call an ambulance to take you to the emergency department when you're already here at an emergency department, and all that because the wait time is too long for you? Yeah. You realize that if you call an ambulance, they may just take you back to the waiting area and have you wait there, right? Yeah, I know that. I'm still gonna call. Well, okay, if that's what you want to do. So after helping the guy into his car, I decided to let him do just that. At that point, there was nothing else I could really do. After all, I'm just a security guard, not his doctor. So I just pushed the wheelchair back inside and went about my business. About 30 minutes later, I'm looking at CCTV footage, and right there, next to this guy's car, is an ambulance. My jaw dropped. The guy actually called 911 for an ambulance, and they came. I continued to watch as the AMT workers helped this guy into a gurney and place him into the ambulance. Then, to my utter shock, they drove off campus. I had thought they were going to drop him back off here, but they freaking left for another hospital? I then realized a couple of things. One, this guy is going to another hospital and going to be gone for who knows how long. 2, when he gets discharged, he's not going to have a ride because, you guessed it, his car is over here at this hospital. Plus, our policy is that if a car is parked in our lot for a few days and we've confirmed that the owner is not here, we have to call the police and report an abandoned vehicle. So this guy is now getting additional costs added to his medical expenses because he took the ambulance, possibly have to wait even more in the emergency department of another hospital before being seen, and may rack up some fines for abandoning his car depending on how long he's there. All because he didn't want to wait in the emergency department with everyone else. But hey, guess 20 minutes was way too much for him. Sadly, OP added an edit onto the story that says, "Edit, just found out that the car was taken early this morning, so no car fines for this guy." Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called DV7K1. It says, "Not only that, but the ambulance trick does not work at all. Patients are triaged based on clinical reasoning. Watching similar people to this guy pull the same trick, come in by ambulance, get checked over, seen to, and triaged by the same nurse, and then get sent back out into the waiting room, the look on their face makes me warm and fuzzy every single time." This is an interesting comment because my experience with the hospital in town and some of the health issues I've had over the years is that if you get taken in an ambulance, they will generally take you to a room right away, or they'll leave you in the hallway on the gurney, but inside the actual emergency room doors, not near the waiting room, and then as soon as they have a spot, they'll wheel you in. I've never actually been put back into the waiting room, nor have I seen somebody get put back into the waiting room. But then again, I'm talking about the Canadian healthcare system here, which is a little bit different than, down below us. So yeah, we won't talk about them. This story comes to us from Augustus B. McPhee. Need me to stay back and cover a shift? This will cost you big time. This comes from about 15 years ago when I was, and still am, working with people with disabilities in a community home. It's a great job for those who like it, a terrible one for those who don't, meaning that any staff you meet are either very new or long-term like myself. As a consequence, the turnover rate of staff is high, and replacement staff are slow to be hired, meaning you often find shifts not covered straight away. This is an industry where simply not having a shift filled isn't an option, particularly where I work, in a house with a single day staff and a single night staff, each working 12 shifts on a 7-day spread over 2 weeks roster. There are some strict rules regarding hours you can work, intended to avoid burnout, but more used to keep a rein over time, which in our industry paid 70% of your hourly rate for the first 3 hours, above your 76-hour fortnightly maximum, and 100% for any time after that. You can't demand overtime, but if they require you to work longer, they can't not pay you overtime. Also worth noting is that the people we work with are vulnerable, meaning they cannot be left unsupervised. Long story short, you can't go home until your replacement arrives. So back in the early 2000s, we were having problems locating staff, lots of people working overtime, and a lot of fresh faces appearing and disappearing. The house I worked in wasn't difficult in particular for adults with intellectual disability, but there was no support, by which I mean the worker there had to fend for themselves. There was no supervisor in the next building, they were miles and miles away. I frequently at this time had to stay back half an hour, waiting for staff to come replace me. I was less than happy with the way it was handled each time I called the office to tell them the night staff haven't arrived. Do you know who is booked? To which I'd get the reply, "We're still looking. How late can you stay?" The obvious answer was, "Until I'm replaced." But what I often said was, I prefer not to stay after the end of my shift, but that doesn't seem to matter now, so I'll stay here until someone comes. Each time a new face arrived, I'd give them all the information they'd need for the shift, introduce them, walk them through their duties, etc. This would take 20 to 30 minutes. The point being is, I don't just jump ship when a staff arrives to replace me. This is someone's home, and I like them, so I'm not going to leave them in the hands of someone uninformed. Cut to that weekend. My roster had me working 12-hour days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Come Friday night, my replacement didn't arrive. I waited. I sent a text message to the supervisor after 15 minutes, then called after 30, left a message, and when they eventually called back, I could tell they had not found a replacement. I told them I'd stay until they did. This was, by that time, an hour after I was meant to finish, 10 p.m. Come 11, they call and say they simply can't find a replacement. They offer a deal and say if I stay and do the night shift, I can take the next shift off. It's pretty even, so you won't miss out, they said. They then changed their tone and said, it's not really a request, we have no other option. Treat this as a direction. I reminded them it was a passive house, meaning you got half the hourly rate from midnight, but you could sleep in the bed provided, so I'd actually be taking a pay cut. They didn't know what else they could do, so I made a suggestion. I'd stay and do the night shift, but I wasn't going to give up my next shift. I was going to do that one as well. They agreed. It meant they didn't need to find a replacement for me in the morning, so they thought it was a good deal for them. It was, however, an even better deal for me. It took a few emails over the weekend with the union to sort out the particulars, but what happened was this. Once I couldn't leave my worksite because of a lack of replacement, I was on overtime. As this overtime was because of a direction, not voluntary, it remained in place until I went home. Because I didn't agree to drop my following day shift, my overtime continued until I ended on Saturday night. The upshot being that working 36 hours in a row resulted in the equivalent of 60 hours pay. I was the first person to, as they say, pull this stunt, and word got around that if you didn't get replaced, you were actually the person who was in a position of power. It didn't take long until the department put a little more effort into training and employing extra staff, so something like this never happened again. Not at least to me. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Knows Idle. Appreciate your efforts in sticking it out to help people, but it's a shame those same efforts are taken advantage of, or even preyed on in such industries. Is there better shift changeovers now? OP responded to this comment and said, things had improved up to pre-COVID, but staffing numbers dropped again. So waiting for replacements when regular staff are on holiday is becoming common again. OP definitely won in this case, 60 hours worth of pay, wow. Now, management obviously wasn't doing the math there, and they really just needed somebody to cover, so I think they might have been a little flustered that they couldn't find somebody else, and didn't really think of the consequences of having OP stay there for so many hours. I mean, if this situation happened too many times, that would be a lot of money. And you know, that money could probably be better spent, I don't know, on new employees that could help take up the slack. This story comes to us from Grim, that guy. I'll meet the call count, but won't make the calls count. I worked at a call center for a collection agency for nearly 5 years. Anybody that has worked in this type of environment knows that there are all sorts of targets that are expected to be met, be they daily, monthly, or whatever. One of our targets was to make a certain number of calls per day. I believe it was 120. Naturally though, the more contact you would make with debtors, the less time there was to make other calls. It's usually not an issue, but some days you might make significantly more contact than others, and sometimes your call count might be 2/3 of what it should be. We would get regular updates on the call count, and our manager would let us know if we were on track, and at the end of the day, they would give you the final results. I found it very annoying when you would have a successful day collecting debts and generating revenue for the company, only to have a manager dwell on your call count. Any protest of, yes, I didn't meet the call count requirements, but hey, look at the revenue I generated today. It doesn't matter. The target must be met. Even if it wasn't a successful day, but I knew I still ended up spending much time in contact with these debtors in attempt to collect, I would ask managers to review my talk time to see that the efforts were being made to do what we are hired to do. It doesn't matter. The requirement must be met. Now, to be clear, a call only counted if someone picked up or the call went to a voicemail box that wasn't full. The system was unable to register events otherwise. Not in service, voicemail box full, rings out with no voicemail box or answer. Meaning, if you were to make hundreds of attempts in one day, only a fraction are registered. Everyone is aware of this, but it didn't matter to the company. Well, I was tired of the unfairness of it all. It also doesn't help that the company was grossly skimming our bonuses that my department's client provided to us as a reward for successfully collecting on these debts. It was really obvious when our bonuses became random numbers when it was only possible for them to be multiples of 5. Frustrated with this literal theft and underappreciation of successful collection, the whole point of the job, I decided to comply with the call count expectations and never be under the target again. I created a notepad file with a list of all the telephone numbers that went straight to voicemail. These are often numbers that have blocked us, or presumably the owner of the number set it up as away or something. From then on, I made sure to make 15 to 20 calls per hour that would register, implying that even more calls were being made that they just couldn't see due to the way the system registered calls. I would spread these calls out so my activity wouldn't seem suspicious and would spend all day reading articles on the internet. Naturally, the revenue I had been generating decreased by about 80%. How come you're not collecting? Well, manager, you can see I am surpassing my call count target and my talk time is very low, so I'm just not getting the opportunities to do so. It should be noted that whatever I was collecting after doing so was really easy. The people whose accounts we received who could pay and wanted to pay anyway. Often these people would call us, so I just relied on that to make it appear like I was doing anything at all. They started giving me lower value portfolios to work with, which is fine by me. You are stealing my bonus, the very incentive I have to do more than the bare minimum anyway for a paycheck. I honestly thought I was quiet quitting, but no, I had a reputation as a valued member of our department and company, so no one wanted to fire me. I guess they just chalked up my lack of success to the crap portfolios they were assigning me. Steal my bonuses and dwell on a target that would be better judged as a marker of effort rather than an end-all be-all, and I couldn't care less. I was getting paid to read. This went on for nearly 2 years until I had to leave for mental health reasons. OP added in a comment down below. It said, I should also add that I had created macros for the AS400, old IBM software, so that I could complete most system tasks with a simple keyboard shortcut, further reducing my bare minimum workload and increasing the time available to read. OP, that's actually awesome that you were able to reduce the workload. These days with AI, I think workloads are going to get reduced quite a bit more. Although I am kind of concerned about where AI is going, but that's for another video altogether. I think a lot of customer service jobs are going to get replaced by AI, and that's a really scary proposition. I really enjoyed your story though, OP, because I spent 8 years in call centers myself. I think I actually worked in like 9 different call centers over 8 years, but that's a whole other story as well. And I know how it goes in there and how tedious it can be. So your story was great to read about you screwing over the company that was trying to screw over you. This story comes to us from Rest Easy Girl. No, you said you wouldn't get it. First post on this sub, and it's a short one but a good one that my family always come back to laugh about. For context, this was a few years ago and involves my sister and parents. My sister is around 13-14 at this point, and her teenage rebellion is in full swing. At one point, my sister brings up wanting a pet of her own. We had dogs already, but she wanted something that was hers, and only hers. My parents were hesitant on the matter, given that my sister wasn't the most responsible teen, and any small animal like a hamster would be in danger if not kept a close watch on with my rescue dogs. Lucky for them, my sister didn't want a hamster or a rabbit or even a snake. My sister wanted a giant African land snail. If you're not familiar with the breed, they are huge snails, and not really everybody's idea of a cuddly pet. When my sister brought the idea of her new snail friend up to my parents, my dad immediately shot her down, stating, "We will not get you a snail. I'm never buying a snail for you." Pretty clear, snail problem done. My sister should move on to another idea soon, right? Wrong. Cue malicious compliance. See, my sister was, and is still, a stubborn person. So my dad said he won't get her a snail, but didn't explicitly say no snails allowed. A plan was formed. The weekend after the snail conversation, my sister asks to borrow some money to go shopping with her friends, and uses said money to purchase her very own baby snail. When she got home and introduced the snail, called Loki, my parents were livid. "We told you couldn't get a snail." My sister, smug as ever, replied, "No, you told me you weren't buying one, so I did." Loki lived with us until my sister moved out at 19 and is still well today. This was lighthearted and my parents got over it very quickly, provided that my sister agreed to care for him, which she did. Plus, there's a lot less risk of a snail escaping into the clutches of my dog's paws than a hamster. Jumping down to the comment section, we have one from a user called Stumble Wiggins. It says, "Did she pay your parents back? 'Cause otherwise, they did buy her a snail." Opie responded to that one and said, "Ha, good point. I don't think she ever did. We'll definitely be stealing your comment to bring to family dinner next time." So after doing a little bit of research into that kind of snail, they could live to be up to around 9 years old. That is crazy. That's a long time to look after a little thing that doesn't do much. Kind of an odd choice for a pet if you ask me. Might just be better off getting a rock. Put some googly eyes on it, drop it into a terrarium, good to go, and best part, it'll never die. Check out all 4 OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.